Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome into the TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, off for a week last week, but here I am back, and I'm starting off on a running pace. As today, we got a top-notch podcast set up for you. Congresswoman, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace joins us to give us an update on what she thought of the whole DNC convention last week and some updates regarding the GOP views on cannabis. And we'll get in a little bit of conversation regarding the whole hemp side of things, too. So we got a really hot podcast here today. So let's jump right into it and welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varell, who held the fort down last week. Big round of applause.
I did.
Top-notch job, my friend.
It's good to have you back. How was vacation?
It was very good. It was good just to clear the head, but up at Torch Lake in northern Michigan, did not realize there's some pretty big celebrities. Chris Pine, Eminem, Kid Rock, all had places along this lake, and rumor has it they were there actually last week. I didn't get a chance to see them, but for the most part, it was good to get up there, and 80-degree weather all week, clear the head. But here we go, fall season. It was busy, I'm sure you were watching the DNC convention last week, and seemed like it was a whole lot of nothing. So let's jump into that and welcome in South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace back to the podcast. Where's the summer gone? Here we are at the end of August already. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've had one of the busiest August recess in my political career. They say a lot of people think when you have recess, you go home, you vacation, you don't do anything. And I'm sure there are some members of Congress that don't do anything for the month of August, but I've been working 7 days a week. I have not had a single day off since we got into recess. I've been busier than I've ever been, which is good that I'm married to my job. I love the work, but we are busy, and it's great.
That's the price of change, right?
Yeah. Price of change. And also, like, I love the job. It doesn't feel like work. And my kids are always like, why are you always working? Why are you always on your computer? I'm like, I love my job. It doesn't feel like work because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Listen, wanted to have you on, lots to talk about and share, but we wanted to touch on last week. DNC convention took place. I look back in early July. You were on the floor at the RNC convention with cannabis lobbyist Don Murphy, and you were talking about a lot about cannabis reform. We did hear some rumors with a couple of guests that Anthony had on last week that there were some talks going on behind the scenes about cannabis reform at the DNC. However, that topic did not make the main stage. So what'd you make of that?
Well, it's interesting because the left and Democrats, they run on a platform of being pro-cannabis, pro-marijuana, but they really haven't done anything to progress the movement and inch it anywhere closer. Now, I hope with rescheduling, I'm assuming that'll happen right before the election because they want the marijuana votes, the cannabis votes. So I'm assuming that'll happen. That's finally. But legislatively, they haven't done anything. And I am pro-cannabis, and I've got a great bill, the States Reform Act, which I think really addresses it from all levels and lets states be in the driver's seat, for example. But it just isn't a part of anything that they're ever really truly working. Like a lot of things, it's all talk and no action.
So you believe it's broken promises then?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think, with the rescheduling aspect, I think it's a sign of them scrambling, and start acknowledging they've not done anything. And this is a way to sort of get around the legislative branch to do it. And, if that's what it takes. Of course, I support descheduling, but we'll take rescheduling as a win when it happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of weeks back, Donald Trump had a press conference where he was asked about his stance on cannabis. He seemed to segue or almost immediately go into, well, there's something going on in Florida, which leads me to believe he has seen some sort of talking points. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that he's going to give his stance on cannabis leading up to the election, or that might kind of take a backseat and it's a card he'll play if given the opportunity?
I don't know if he will. And of course, I don't speak for him or his campaign. I hope that he will address it. I know that in previous remarks I've seen of him publicly, he has supported medical cannabis, for example. So I would like to hear support for rescheduling. Then that would be, I think a statistically significant number of Republicans who support a rescheduling or a medical cannabis operation, which is what they have in Florida, right? And we're trying to get it in South Carolina. We're 9 years in, haven't gotten there yet. We're trying. But, Florida's done medical in a very responsible way, and maybe he'll come out and say he supports that. He's seen it in his state. I don't know, but it would be good going into the November election to know where he stands, so that America knows where he stands. It's obviously wildly popular. In my very conservative red state of South Carolina, recreational cannabis is supported by well over 50%. I think it's 53% of citizens in South Carolina support recreational. Over 75 to 80% support medical.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
it's a wildly popular thing, and
Yeah.
and a lot to know where you stand on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of your state, I mean, I
Mhm.
know that you had tweeted last week that hemp is vital to our economy, which I'm
Mhm.
assuming was in reference to South Carolina. Some proponents of hemp claim that it's an accessibility issue. Hemp right now is allowing people access to THC based therapies, we'll call them, more
Mhm.
freely than the state regulated cannabis businesses. What's your take on hemp versus cannabis, or where do you see them eventually either being amalgamated or coming together from a regulatory standpoint? Because right now
Yeah.
there's a lot of opacity around that.
Yeah, and I think it's a way to get around the THC issue, right? For people, I mean, they're the same plant, right, with different levels of THC,
Mhm.
but it's a way for Republicans to support an industry, but not going over the line on the THC side of it. And in South Carolina, we do allow hemp to be grown and have hemp farmers and that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
we're working on medical. And so 9 years now, State Senator Tom Davis has been trying to get medical here. But in terms of the farm bill and hemp, we don't want anything to get in the way of hemp growers anywhere. And so there was an
Yes.
issue in the farm bill, and myself and some others stepped up. Hemp should be perfectly legal everywhere. And then if it were up to me, I would allow states to decide how they want to regulate cannabis. That should be a thing that states are involved at their level, whether it's medical or recreational, and how they want to implement it. Different states have done it different ways with some success and some failures. We know that when you tax it more than alcohol, the industry just breaks down, and then you actually encourage
Yeah.
black markets, which you don't want to have. So the conversation about how you tax hemp and how you tax
Yeah.
a cannabis THC plant, got to keep taxes low so that we don't
Mhm.
encourage black markets to pop up. And that has been a lesson, I think, from the states that adopted it early on. But there's a lot of work to be done, and Republicans need to get on board, because the vast majority of Americans are with me, with you guys,
Yeah.
on how to move forward in a very responsible manner.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And when looking at the Farm Bill, I mean, I know the original implications of the Farm Bill were industrial applications.
Mhm.
And what we're seeing a lot of right now are intoxicating hemp products that are
Mhm.
winding up in the hands of consumers. Do you see there being a divergence at some point in time from, let's just say, the re-rating of the Farm Bill, or something that's a lot less onerous than, let's say, the Miller Amendment
I
that
mean,
addresses
yeah,
intoxicating hemp products, but also doesn't impact the hemp growers' business as it relates to industrial?
potentially. But that's if we even get to the farm bill. And I have some doubts on whether or not it actually ever makes it to the floor for a vote. So in the meantime, we need to keep a
Mhm.
close eye on it and make sure that it's not done, as you say, in an onerous manner. We don't want to hurt industry
Yeah.
and encourage, and actually want to encourage more. I mean, I want everything legalized. We've all
Mhm.
seen the benefits for a lot of reasons, and we don't want the farm bill to set us back in any of it.
So what would you say in
Yeah.
your view right now, with the majority of the GOP members, like how do they view cannabis? Because there's a lot of people in this space that think that hemp is just another word for cannabis. And I
Yeah.
know, that there's only so much that you can and can't answer right now, but at the end of the day, it's just like, how do they view it? Because there's a lot of people in this space that do believe that there's a lot of advantages that
Mhm.
side of the industry has over cannabis right now, when the two are
Mhm.
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think that in the GOP realm, people are afraid of it. Like,
Is
like
it a generational thing that
I
we've
think it's a
here?
generational thing, but it's like everything. It's like the abortion issue, whether it's cannabis or abortion or women's issues, people are afraid of being primaried. And so they haven't polled it, because if they polled it, they would see, oh wow, there's actually significantly more support for this position than I realized. And
Yeah.
so, when I talk to people in the cannabis space, when you come to the Hill, when you come to Washington, come armed with data
Yes.
specifically for that member of Congress's district, and how much broad support there is for it, the number of nonviolent cannabis incarcerations that have
Yeah.
kept generations back. I mean, there are just so many reasons to do it as a Republican. And in
Mhm.
in not only that, well, number one is the right moral thing to do, but two, it's a winning electoral issue. It's like a win-win situation. Every election I've had, they've tried to come at me for my stance on abortion. They try to come at me. The first ads in every race are almost always about pot, are almost always these crazy, outlandish things. I just won my Republican primary by almost 30 points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think you guys understand where the people are. Like, I'm just a man of the people, and I represent their values, which aren't Washington's values per se. And I think that's just, it's generational, but it's also people live and operate out of fear.
Mhm.
And that's what holds us back. And it's like, no, if you actually listened to the people, you would understand that this is where the vast majority, I'm always way ahead of the where I should be in time and everything.
Yeah.
But it's just where people are, and people are afraid of their own shadow. They're afraid of being primary. They're afraid of their own elections, that they won't take a common sense, reasonable stance on cannabis. Like, it's mind boggling to me. I don't understand it. And I'm someone who has a fight every 2 years. I have 2 elections every 2 years. And every year I'm winning by more and more. And I'm like, and I'm always doubling down, tripling down on my positions. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not running away
Yeah.
from it. I'm just owning it. And
So,
we win by
so
a larger margin
speaking,
of the election.
Yeah.
so speaking of within the party, I mean, we
Mhm.
have seen red states such as Ohio just roll out an adult use cannabis framework with great success.
Mhm.
Amendment 3 is on the ballot in November in Florida. If that passes, that'll be another red state that goes adult use. Do you think that these states within the party are kind of lighting the fuse for people to take notice and see these systems are being implemented? Hell, and society's not going to hell with the implementation of adult use cannabis. Like, even if this is a generational thing, like these
Mhm.
these markets coming online and these systems will show people that this can work when implemented into
I
society.
hope it is lighting the match. I really, really do. Like, every time I come through my airport, I ask airport security, how much marijuana came through the airport this week, and check bags. I mean, it's like 80
Yeah.
pounds, 50 pounds. I walk down any street in my district, the main drag and stuff. I can smell it. I can smell it, in different places in South Carolina. Like, it's here. So you might as well regulate it, do it in a responsible way, so people
Yeah.
aren't getting crap off the street that might be laced with other things,
Yes.
fentanyl included. Like, it's time to move forward. It's here. I know, like, my kids are in high school. There are kids that come to high school fried every day. Use some of this, tax revenue, like in my bill, and educate children on why they shouldn't be doing it at a young age. Wait until their brains are developed and older, and see the benefits of it later on in life. But, like, there's so much opportunity here, and people just want to look the other way. And so it continues to be a problem, and that we're unwilling to address it at all with folks. And so, like,
Well,
it's here in South Carolina, it's everywhere. You might as well regulate it, tax it,
Right.
and educate kids, and make sure store owners aren't selling it illegally. And because I know teenage kids, I know what stores they go to, where they try to go to and get illegal products. And it's like, there is a path here. It's called the States Reform Act, and it's got
Yeah.
great responsible things in there to regulate it responsibly, and because it's already here. So
Yeah.
I don't understand why
You
we
talked
all
about
can't move
data.
forward.
Data is
What's that?
extremely important. You talked about data. Data is extremely important. There was a
Yeah.
comment period for 60 days of rescheduling. There was close to 43,000 comments, I think, if I'm correct, Anthony, and it was 92% said, yes, we need to reschedule it. And I think it was around 65% full on descheduling. There has been actually data that's proved, too, that the accessibility for underagers has actually been down in states like Colorado. And I think
Mhm.
consumption underage has actually gone down as well. So how much do you think, because what we're learning more and more, it's like, it's not the politicians' responsibility to be up to speed on a lot of this topic. It's more of our
Mhm.
responsibility to go to Washington and educate them on. But if we have hardcore data like that, one, do you think a lot of politicians are aware of some of those comments and some of those percentages that came down regarding the comment period of rescheduling? Or do you think it's more about us as an effort, as an overall industry, that we need to get to Washington and inform them of some of this stuff?
I think they're clueless, is what I think. I think they haven't been informed. And the other thing is too, is that, in Washington, the staff a lot of times control the meetings. The staff control, they're the gatekeeper to the member. The member may not know, because staff may just have made the decision for them, right? And not laid it out. So it's really important, when you're advocating for a topic like this, that you get with the actual member themselves, and
Yeah.
that they got the data. And because I don't think they are informed, I don't think they are educated. I know that when I find out places where teenagers have access to it, I call the police chief of that jurisdiction, and I'm like, You need to go over there and fix that.
Yeah.
And I think with regulation, like in Colorado, that doesn't surprise me at all. And in fact, I'm not shocked at all by it, because everyone wants to follow the law. And so, and they know they're going to be held accountable if they don't, and
Yeah.
even more so. But like in states where it's illegal, it's kind of like the Wild West out there, which is why you need regulations, why you need to know where there might be designated areas where you can go buy and what products you can buy and not buy. Because right now they're just getting it freely, or in some cases, kids can just get it off the street and you don't know what you're getting. And so the regulation of it makes it safer for everybody.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Anthony.
With hemp, I mean, hemp also falls into ag with laying in the farm bill. Are you seeing more representation from hemp in Washington versus, let's say, state regulated cannabis, or are they both pretty much the same?
It's hard to say. I don't sit on ag, and so I don't get a lot of calls from hemp farmers. At the state level, occasionally people pop up, they want a license to grow hemp, or they want to support the state medical cannabis compassionate care act in South Carolina. I don't hear a lot from hemp folks on the Hill. I probably hear more from cannabis people than I hear from hemp, but I am kind of like the cannabis queen on the Republican side of the ticket, right? So I've taken a lead on cannabis issues within our party. So my door is pretty much open to everybody, hemp or cannabis.
Yeah. Well, it's an industry, let's face it, the amount of jobs it's going to create, if we get proper legislation, the amount of tax revenue for individual states. Like, yes, we are a smaller industry right now, but you see the true capabilities and size. There's many people believe, both from the private and public side, that this could create the biggest generational wealth opportunity this generation has seen if the proper legislation is moved, which is why we create content pertaining to this space. But you brought up the whole States Act. You got 3 weeks, I think, now until you guys exit for the election season. So do you think the States Act will get a hearing within the next 3 weeks?
It'll be zero. We have 3 weeks. I've got some other bills I'm hoping to get through, and we'll see. We've run out of time, basically.
Yeah.
And again, my bill is like the most responsible, the most nonpartisan, easiest bill to do. And I can't even get a vote on IVF right now. Like I can't, so like there's it's just kind of crazy to me right now. But I will refile the bill in the next session. But right now, a good effort would be between now and the end of the year is to educate members about the States Reform Act, and then ask them to co-sponsor it. And so showing that we can have a growing level of support. But believe it or not, there are some members of Congress who say they are pro-cannabis who've actually tried to sabotage my States Reform Act bill because their egos are a little hurt that I wrote this really great bill. It's my idea, actually.
That's how it works.
That's how it works, right? You have a better idea next time and you can do it, right? And so there's a little bit of self-sabotage going on. And so having the cannabis industry reach out to their members of Congress to encourage them to just co-sponsor the bill so that when we refile in the 119th Congress, that we have even more support, no matter who's in charge. To me, this is just common sense, but rescheduling is going to happen. And then once we get that done, then the States Reform Act may take a different shape. And so, in the next session also, but it'd be great to have more co-sponsors on the bill between now and the end of the year would be terrific.
So last thing I'll bring up then, with rescheduling, if that does get announced, do you think the stance and the view of this whole industry from a lot of politicians from Washington will look at this completely different?
I think it gives them cover to actually look at it different. So now it's out of their hands. It's been rescheduled. And so I think states can go back and look at, their laws and their regulations and what they want to do next. But I think it'll give elected officials cover, and that may be a good thing. And if it helps us get to the next level, obviously, I think the only way to solve the issue is by descheduling. And putting regulations in place. But for now, with rescheduling, I fully support it 100%. And if that gives politicians cover to help the industry, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, I hear you. Here we go, end of August, and we're going into a full-on election season. What do you make of all this? You got 60 days, right?
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up at this point. I think the vice president, she's had her honeymoon period, but we're still pre-Labor Day. And so I don't think it really matters until the 1st of October. And then the person who's going to win is going to peak in October. They're not peaking now. And I think a lot can change. I want to see us have conversation about the way the vice president's policies are going to wreck the economy, how she has supported this open border of immigration, the fentanyl crisis, even how she's going to set women back decades. I just saw the story last night about this biological man who wants to play in women's golf on the LPGA tour. That guy's like 3 times the size of any woman on the LPGA tour. I don't think so. And so what they will do to women, like I had an incident with my daughter last year who was 14 in a dressing room with a guy in a mini skirt and a lace bralette putting underage girls in a dressing room at the store called Aerie. And I'm like, what she will do to set women back decades, maybe 100 years for the achievements that we've had. I'm like, over my dead body, hell no. So I'm going to be vocalizing a lot of things to women too. And be like, do you understand how this is going to set us back in all of our successes, all the glass ceilings we've shattered for 100 years, how they're just going to roll it back and give away our successes to men? No offense to you guys, but I mean, I worked really hard to graduate from the Citadel as the first woman. I'm the first Republican woman ever elected to Congress from South Carolina. Like, you know, I've broken a lot of glass ceilings, and I'm not going to see my achievements stolen by men. No way.
What do you think is the biggest thing you've learned from your experience in Washington?
Ego is a hell of a drug. It's, to me, the stuff that doesn't get done because of ego or because of money or because of the lobby. It's really sad. Because we could do so much more if you didn't have the influx of influence and money and influence and power. Power is a really powerful drug, and it's addictive substance. And humility is needed in Washington. I think we get a lot more done if people were more humble about why they're there.
Yeah. Well, you're working 7 days even during your break off. So
I am 7 days a week.
Change, right?
Yep.
Well, listen, appreciate you for checking in. Give us shedding a little light as Anthony brought up the whole hemp side of things and getting a different idea. And then most importantly, too, just where you think, obviously the States Acts, we're not going to be seeing any movement with that between now and when you leave. And at the same time, too, just an update on how we're progressing this overall industry and how people view it within Washington. But as usual, really appreciate your time, and let's keep in touch. Okay.
Of course. Thanks, guys. You guys have been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Well, she said it best. Ego is a powerful thing, isn't it? And
yeah, and I mean, I think the 2 biggest data points that she said on that segment were rescheduling she thinks gets done before the election.
Yep.
And then the second time around, she said rescheduling will happen definitively. Yeah. She wasn't speaking speculatively.
One thing
I'll take that at face value.
Yeah. One thing I really grabbed my attention to was the fact that we've learned this in Washington, that nobody really wants to put their fingerprints on this when it comes to rescheduling. Or the Safe Banking States Act, a lot of these different bills that are being presented. However, this is out of their hands. This is from an agency. They reschedule it. Now there's actually an effort for them to look at this from a completely different view. But interesting to see how things will develop pertaining to the hemp and cannabis space, because there were some great comments that were outlined here that I think the Dank Informer actually wrote one which really opened up my eyes. Where was that comment? Anyways, I'll get to it in a bit. It's Monday, 2:25, a little bit earlier today. Appreciate everybody for checking in here. The TDR Traded Black podcast, Anthony Vrell and myself, Shad Dales, back from a week off. But let's queue up Monday. MSO's Mondays. We're bringing Dan Aarons. Aarons. Happy Monday, sir. A little bit earlier. Trading session. Don't you love it when we arrange these podcasts during trading day? Oh, I think you're on mute, my friend. He's on mute.
Dope. There we are.
Sorry. There you are. Good to see you. How are things?
Good. Yeah, I am a busy boy, and I might be distracted looking at multiple screens and stuff here. But happy to be on with you guys. And
what'd you think of that?
Oh, great segment with Nancy. I think very highly of Nancy Mace. Ever since I've been familiar with her game, and she is a good one and a good person to have, especially on the Republican side of things, as a great proponent of cannabis reform. So good job, Nancy, and good job you guys having her on.
Yeah. Well, I think if anything, Anthony, from what I learned too, is just that we got to get to Washington and educate more because, you got to have the hardcore data facts because as she said, there's just a lot of people that are completely know nothing and are uneducated on this industry. And the perception, I guess, with a lot of these policymakers are just from, like we said all along, older generation. They're afraid of cannabis because look at this comment the Dank Informer writes. I can buy a 10 milligram THC gummy from the unregulated hemp industry and it's considered legal, but a 10 milligram THC gummy from a state regulated cannabis company is a felony. What? And that's why there's so much
I mean,
confusion.
I think the biggest takeaway from what Representative Mace alluded to is we need to start sending the staffers gift baskets from the MSOs with products, because I mean, if they're the gatekeepers and they're the ones setting the agenda, the best way to get to the actual representatives is going to be through those gatekeepers and those staffers. So I mean, it's going to be a function of keeping them happy.
Very good point. They are very territorial when it comes to a lot of that stuff. But if you can get in with the right wording and right approach with those people, then that's the conversations that you want to have. But for the most part, I was away last week, but for the most part, how did the overall industry? There's a few people that commented in a few of our recent interviews. What's up with cannabis stocks and how they're performing lately? They haven't performed that well, but have they not? I think they've done actually pretty decent the last couple of weeks. Have they not?
Well, the last couple of weeks, or are we talking about the last year? Because everybody likes to complain and be down, and they want things to only go one direction. And lo and behold, everybody should look at your returns over the past year. And we're talking about 30, 35, 40, 45%, depending on what you own. I'm not quoting numbers there to my particular fund, but no, look at the 1 year returns, people, and remind yourself how depressed we were a year ago.
Yeah.
So, but
some really impressive.
Action,
yeah.
It's the volumes are anemic. These stocks are easy to push around. And if we see a red day, I see some people on Twitter that are upset, like, oh, why doesn't the fund actively manage it? Why doesn't it have cash to invest to push the stocks up? No, the fund's not here to be your daddy and to push stocks up. When the fund trades, it wants to get the best prices possible. But the fund's been in a big time buy and hold situation over the past weeks or months. No one wants me rebalancing this fund like a certain competitor fund that butchered things up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So we are waiting. We're treading water right now is what we're doing. But just over an hour ago on the Alpha Nooner with Mackenzie, we had Charlie Bachtell and lots of good discussion about Ohio.
Yeah, no kidding.
And good discussion about how everything is perfectly on track for the rescheduling. There's no reason to think it's not.
It's great.
So
Ohio already. I was reading some information. Our good friend Todd Harris from CB1 Capital, who's a friend of the show. He was outlining that Ohio in the first couple of weeks is outpacing both Illinois and Michigan for when they went live back in 2019 and 2020. But Anthony, we've had a few conversations with David Gobert and a few others, just how attractive this launch has been. And I know we've talked about it a few times, but it hasn't slowed down even from what it's been 3 weeks now, 4 weeks since it went live.
I think it's been about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And hey, going live. And you completely jinxed me. You completely jinxed me in the pre-show because my internet right now is atrocious, and I can't see you guys. I can only hear you, pretty much.
You look good, my friend. You look good. You sound good. You're doing a great job. But
yeah, you lagged for a second there, Anthony. But yeah, we can still see you and hear you. Hey, some points to add about Ohio. That was getting talked about with Charlie today. Hey, do you remember how quickly and suddenly Ohio started?
I know.
Did they have a chance to ramp up? Did they have a chance to market? Did they have a chance to put? Let's just saying and
those
say
regs aren't even in place yet.
No. So Charlie was talking about the fact that people were coming into the dispensaries and saying, hey, are you guys doing adult use now? Can we even buy here, or is it still medical? Nobody knew.
Nobody.
So the fact that they are killing it for 3 weeks without any ramp up, without any really solid, good marketing and messaging and so on means it's still just ramping up. There's more to come. There's more to follow. Nothing was organized. They just turned on a switch. So there's it's just getting started in Ohio. It's a really good example, though.
Go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was going to say Dan nailed it on the head. I mean, I think it's September 1st that the actual adult use regs will be able to be implemented. They can market. They can actually get out of this, let's say, medical 2.0 system that they're in right now and actually operate as adult use cannabis businesses.
Yep. I think if anything, well, it goes to show how much education that I think a lot of people from this market, I guess when you look at neighboring states like Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, are there some, let's face it, residents from that state that have learned a lot over the years, and now that it's live, like you said, there's been no promotion whatsoever. There was no lead up time. And I'm not going to lie, like, you want it to be successful, but I'm actually surprised as to how successful it's been. And Todd was kind of alluding to, like, this could be a $3 billion market, which is massive to say the least. But if anything, when states like this go live and have that much success, it's just a blueprint for other governors and politicians to pass this off and to see what kind of revenue dollars are being generated. And that's, to Anthony, your point, when you asked that question to Congresswoman Mace, it's like, does that ignite the fire and give you kind of an example to people in Washington to see, what's working? And, great start to say the least.
Absolutely.
Hey, another important point, we talked about it before, but Ohio is a MSO friendly model as compared to the Wild West of opening everything up. And they're proving that model is actually consumer friendly as well. It's good for the consumer. It's good for the state. It's good for the MSOs, the operators, as compared to some other states. The early ones on the West Coast, or New York, if we want to talk about it, that opened up decriminalization. So Ohio's right for a number of reasons, but let's not forget the fact that some people bitch when they hear, oh, it's limited licenses and that's just, good for the operators. No, they're proving it's good for the consumers as well.
So it's being done the right way, more or less, correct?
Absolutely.
And you can't argue because the numbers are showing that, right? And people are happy.
For sure.
All right. Well, I think that was good. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to discuss. We wanted a quick check in. Can you believe this? We're already at the end of August and segue into the fall season. September should be interesting. History has shown that the market doesn't perform all that well in September. I think in September, they're calling for volatility in October. Historically, it's like that, especially during an election season. So I think we're bumpy for the next 60 days. However, if Congresswoman Mace is correct and we do get this rescheduling announced, she keeps thinking that, well, she said that it's going to happen and probably right before the election. We've heard that quite a bit, but October seems to be the timeline, but we don't know and I don't want to speculate. But if that's the case, then things should improve quite substantially, I would think, volume-wise into this space.
I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here and say, no, we don't like to speculate. Everybody's learned their hard lessons about speculating on timelines and so on. But the other side of it is we have no good reason to think that rescheduling is not moving along. And for those that want to speculate and think it's going to be done before election, well, take the election date and back up 30 days. We should see something by then, if you're a believer in the fact that we're going to get it before the election. And I'm just staying the course. So speculation does me no good. Yeah.
Anthony, you had Adam Goers again last week, but he was saying behind the scenes that it was being spoken at the DNC, which is promising, right?
Yeah, I mean, he said there were members of GTI that were there. He said there were members from Cresco that were there. He's obviously a representative of the Cannabis.
Yep.
That was there. And he said that there were events in regards to criminal justice reform, and there were events and conversations that he was happening that were cannabis centric. He said the cannabis conversation was alive and well, not necessarily on the floor of the DNC, but within the confines of the people that were in town for the DNC. Rescheduling is going to happen. I mean, I don't understand why people are getting negative on it. I don't understand why people are getting antsy on it. They didn't do the report, have the OLC memo drop, go through a comment period, and do all of the window dressings just to not get it done. If they don't get it done, I will be very, very surprised.
Yeah.
Here's some thoughts for you, but this is just conjecture on my part. With the way things went in recent weeks, where Trump mentioned cannabis positively, when he didn't do it proactively, he was asked about it, but he had some positive comments. At the DNC, there were people that wanted them to bring up cannabis, wanted the Kamala to mention cannabis reform proactively, and she had no reason to do so. The whole Democratic Party had no reason to do so. That's what everybody needs to remember. Everything's moving forward.
You want to elaborate off that?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a hot button for them. They have so many other hot buttons. They have nothing. Everybody knows they're pro-cannabis. They had nothing to gain in their convention by saying they're pro-cannabis. It's not a hot button. They can't gain anything with the electorate by being pro-cannabis when everybody already knows they're pro-cannabis. Go ahead, Anthony.
No, I agree with you. It just would have been nice to have somebody on stage for 2-3 minutes just talking criminal justice reform and how it's part of the platform. That being said, I completely agree with you. They are pro-cannabis. They've never said anything that's really not pro-cannabis, and I mean it is kind of implied, especially when you look at Tim Walz now. Full adult use state coming online. Yeah. Kamala told the DEA to hurry up and reschedule cannabis. Kamala's also been pro-cannabis since she's been in the White House. They didn't have anything to gain per se from the actual mentioning of it at the DNC, but it wasn't the platform brief, which was good to see as well, that people did forget very quickly.
Well, if you talk about nothing to gain, but we always say like this is our small little bubble and a lot of people are unfamiliar with this overall space. Isn't there a lot to gain in that spotlight, considering how much interest and attention it gets on social media? I would think there's a lot to gain there. Was there not?
I mean, there's plenty of the social media presence from the DNC was crazy. I mean, it was everywhere. There were people talking about every aspect of that thing all day long. So I don't know if they really necessarily needed cannabis to boost or amplify the messaging across social media.
Quite the music selection they had going on there last week. I was like, what is going on here? So I had it kind of like in the background when I was away, but I was like, Little John came out and I was like, what is this? But
so to be fair, I think the entertainment at the DNC was more tasteful than the entertainment at the RNC. When you look at Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock, I thought the entertainment was better integrated and more, let's say, on brand and tasteful versus what we saw at back at the RNC a couple of weeks ago.
You believe the entertainment that's going on at these conventions now? Times that we live in, like back when Reagan, Bush, Clinton, George W. Yeah,
it's pageantry. It's the circus part of the bread and circus, which you got to give the people to keep them nice and calm.
Yeah. Gord, we got you here loud and clear. Take Nancy Mace's advice. Get yourself to Washington. We plan on doing that around the middle of September. So we will have lots of data that we've learned from the last time we were there. So the next steps is to present some of that data and to further educate. So it should be interesting, but we'll make sure to have that content for you guys towards the end of September as we're making a trip there once again. Dan, I appreciate obviously you checking in here today on short notice for the early time, but thanks for making this work. Enjoy the rest of your trading hours. And Anthony, I'll see you back here on Wednesday, TDR Traded Black podcast. As a reminder, subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Lots going on. What were you going to say, my friend?
I was going to say Wednesday is going to be a pretty good episode. We got David Hart and Jesse Shannon from the Cannabis.
Nice.
And then we also have Joe Hodis, the president of Wana Brands,
nice,
to come on and talk about their Wanderous marketplace that they just launched. So that'll be a good episode with back-to-back interviews.
Good stuff.
Hey, and I'm at self-plug here. Anybody, I'll be on the Alpha Nooner tomorrow, Advisor Shares, and I will explain a little bit more of the MSOs versus MSOX relationship that people should understand. Volatility adds to decay. It's in the prospectus, but I'll talk about that. And any other questions? But
cool.
We got some interesting shows coming up later this month, too. We'll be on location for a live stream next week as both Anthony and I are actually heading to Vancouver, Canada. We're going to be doing some facility shooting with Village Farms. So we hope to do a live stream at their facility the one day. But nevertheless, we look forward to doing that and all kinds of traveling trips that we have set up over the next 60 days. But summer's just about over. Time to get back to work. Not that we haven't been already. But here we go. Get ready for the political season and onwards and upwards. But in the meantime, gents, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thank you, everybody, for checking in.
Talk soon, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.